What's interesting about Airbus is that since 2016, it has outperformed the S&P 500. My name is Andrew Stotz. Let's get into this case study. A little background, well, what is Airbus doing? Well, it designs, produces, and delivers aerospace products to its customers. Main customers are, of course, airlines around the world. Airbus is a major player in the global aviation market and also a leading aerospace and defense company. Are the aviation and airlines industry the same? Well, this is a great short video from Airbus. Aviation is the operation of aircraft, including design, development, production, maintenance, and of the aircraft, and of course, all aspects of flying, including commercial and military aviation, is what they're doing. And so examples are Airbus and Boeing. It's incredible how that plane comes together from around the world, and particularly around Europe, and is eventually assembled into what we see. Of course, the airlines industry provides air transportation services for passengers and cargo from one location to another. And it's a subset of the broader aviation industry. So think of Delta or Emirates or American Airlines. So where did the revenue come from for Airbus in 2022? 41% Europe, 26% Asia Pacific, 23% the US or North America, 4% Middle East, and 4% Latin America, and then other countries. What about revenue by segment? 69% is coming from commercial aircraft, helicopters about 12%, and defense and space at about 19%. Now, the best-selling aircraft has had a total of 661 deliveries in 2022. That's the Airbus A320 family. And actually, there's been 10,176 A320s delivered since its launch in 1982. And that's beaten only by Boeing's 737 with 10,877 delivered since 1968. And we can see there's the Airbus A500 and then the Airbus A220. The top aircraft orders from global airlines since November 2023 have been Indigo in India, AirAsia, Malaysia, Wizz Air, Hungary, EasyJet, UK, and Lufthansa in Germany. So who are Airbus's competitors? Well, Boeing is definitely a competitor. Comac, which is a Chinese competitor who's up and coming on the scene, and particularly competing against the Airbus A320neo, which is the most popular one. And Embraer, I don't actually know how to pronounce this one, Embraer in Brazil, and Leonardo in Italy, mainly helicopters and defense. Now, will the new player from China, Comac, break the competitive duopoly between Airbus and Boeing? Comac C919 is a direct competitor to Airbus's A320neo and the Boeing 737. It aims to compete with both Airbus and Boeing. A big Airbus customer, China Eastern Airlines, will order another 100 C919 planes delivered in batches from 2024 to 2031. Comac's significant milestone in 2022 was the certification and first delivery of the C919. If we compare, we can see the A320neo, the Boeing 737 MAX, which has been experiencing some problems recently, and the Comac C919. Can see that they seat about the same number of passengers, and the range is a little bit shorter in the Comac, and the price is 20% or more cheaper for the Comac. Roger Batille, one of the founding fathers of Airbus, contributed towards the airline's initial or the initial entry of this company, and he was a driving force behind the A300 program for Airbus. He served initially as a technical and coordinating manager and became managing director in 1975. Let's look at the company's competitive strategy. First of all, the company is in France. It was founded in 1970. It's got about 134,000 employees and about $59 billion in revenue. The main products come in at commercial aircraft, helicopters, and defense and space. And its competitive advantage came through global presence, technological expertise, a wide range of aircraft, and government support. How was it achieved? Well, it was through continuous investing in research and development, evolving technologies, and collaborating with suppliers, airlines, and governments. In fact, the beginning of Airbus, European nations decided to build the A300 together. In 1967, ministers from France, Germany, and Britain agreed to the joint development and production of an aircraft, the A300. The objective was to strengthen the European cooperation in the field of aviation technology, but also to compete with the dominant American aircraft firms like Boeing. Britain withdrew from giving financial support to the Airbus program due to escalating costs. Eventually, Germany stepped up, and Germany offered to contribute up to 50% of the costs if the French did the same. Now, despite the British government's withdrawal, the British manufacturer, Hawker Siddeley, decided to invest $35 million in the A300 project. In 1967, ministers of France, Britain, and Germany signed an MOU to launch the first A300. Now, in 1970, Air France signed to buy the first 6 A300s, and the A320 in 1987 proved to be one of the most successful aircraft families in the world. Improved safety, increased efficiency, and reduced airline maintenance. But I want to tell you that my favorite Airbus plane disappeared. The Airbus 380, a double-decker, wide-body, 4-engine jetliner, first flew in 2005. It was the world's largest passenger airliner, carrying 525 people, and I love this plane. It was faced with production delays and cost overruns. The initial costs were 11 billion, but totaled about 30 billion euros. And its large size had a problem. Airports had to modify their ramps to get people into the plane. And the introduction coincided with Boeing's 787 and Airbus's own A350, which were both more efficient. Keep in mind, in 2005, oil prices were rising and rising, peaking in 2007 at $150 or so per barrel. So the oil price for the cost for the petrol or the oil for running this plane, because it had 4 engines, was enormous. So those high oil prices hurt demand for large aircraft. Break even was to sell 750, but they sold only 251. And they ended the project in 2021. They still exist, but they had to end production. What's the latest news? Well, the latest news actually comes out of Boeing. We can see that in Friday, the 5th of January, there was an unused cabin door which broke away from an Alaska Airlines flight from Portland. And as of Tuesday, January 9th, 2024, the FAA has required that every Boeing 737-9 MAX with a plug door remain grounded until the FAA finds each can be safely returned to operation. So let's go back to what's interesting about Airbus. I said that since 2016, it has outperformed the SP 500. I decided to kind of look at rebase Boeing, Airbus, and the S&P 500 to 100 in February of 2016. And then I picked out specific dates mainly because of booms and busts. You can see in February 2019, Boeing was the absolute hero. It was up 389 from 100. But then by the time we got to March of 2020, when COVID really hit, not only did the S&P fall from 145 down to 120, again, I'm rebasing to 100, but we can see that both Airbus and Boeing both fell to about the same point. But because Boeing had started at a much higher point, of course, it was a massive, massive fall. Then if we see the recovery right now in January of 2024, Boeing has only gotten up to 200, where the S&P 500 is at 249, and Airbus is actually at 261, outperforming the S&P 500, which is pretty incredible when you think about it, because the S&P 500 is packed with the biggest tech companies that have been just growing like crazy. Quarterly results, well, the company reported third quarter 2023 recurring EPS of about €1, which was 20% up year on year and down Q on Q. And the 9-month result, my computer just skipped. The 9-month result was 43.9, and that percent of our full year forecast that I'm going to show you in just a second. Now, is the company financially world class? Here's the method I use as an investor and business owner to measure whether a company has a competitive advantage. It's called the World Class Benchmarking Scorecard that we developed about 10 years ago. So here's how we construct a scorecard for any company. We gather the yearly and quarterly financial data of 26,000 companies worldwide, and then we calculate each company's profitable growth score, which is a composite measure of both profitability and growth. After that, we rank the subject company relative to sector peers of a similar size, and a decile ranking of 1 is best. So a score of 1 or 2 is financially world class. We assess the company's performance over the prior 4 years and the past 12 months. So, is the company financially world class? Airbus? Well, first, let's look at Boeing, since it's just been in the news. Here we can see this company was hit seriously hard from 2020 in the COVID time and never recovered. In fact, it is ranking at 10, which is definitely worse. If we look at Airbus, they actually have been improving since 2020, 2021. Now, in the past 12 months, the company has gotten hurt a bit. So it's below average performance when it comes to profitability and growth. Is it world class? No. Is your company financially world class? Just message me and I'll score your company. Now let's look at the valuation. Here I have my forecast on the free cash flow of the company. And the key thing is I see inventory levels continuing to be high, and that's going to, but still profitability is quite strong. And if we look at the free cash flow to the firm, it's strong at about 6.2 to 7 over the next 5 years. If we make that type of assumption, and then I assume a market risk-free rate of 2.4 and an equity risk premium of, let's say, 4.8, it gets me up to a market return in the French market of about 7.2. So if I use a company beta of about 1.5, I get about a 10% cost of equity. That's the number that matters. Is 9.6 or 10%, is that a reasonable cost of equity? I would say it's pretty reasonable. And then after that, I would look at the weighted average cost of capital, which comes down a bit because the company does have about 19.7% of debt as a percent of total capital. And that brings the weighted average cost of capital down to about 8.5. If we look at this, we can see that the value that I calculate from a free cash flow to the firm and free cash flow to equity is about 140, which is about where the share price is at. So you could say it's fairly valued. We've also seen that it's pretty stable. Now, on a multiple basis, we can see the PE ratio is about 21.4 times for 2023 versus the French industry of industrials, which is at 18.2. So a little bit higher on the PE ratio, but keep in mind that EPS is pretty high in 2023 at 15 and then down to 8% in 2024. Now, the price to book ratio is pretty darn high at about 6.9%, but also keep in mind that the ROE of the company is about 30%, and that very high ROE is some justification for that pretty high multiple. Is this company cheap? No. Is it expensive? I wouldn't say from a free cash flow basis. Maybe a little bit expensive from a price to book basis, but not that much. So what's your company worth?